Hello everyone, Knuckleduster here with yet another State of Cyberpunk 2077 Part 2. Now, some time has passed and I wanted to talk about not only the feedback that Cyberpunk has been getting, but obviously where it's currently at and where it's going. And I want to talk a little bit about the expansion pack Phantom Liberty. And so with that, let's begin on my thoughts on the current 1.61, or simply the Edge Runners patch. Now, in its current state, I would say that the game had launched fine. It's obviously wouldn't have the backlash that it received when it launched before it was ready. However, the game was pretty much fine with the 1.5 patch. But you guys don't want to hear about patches. No, sir. You want to hear and talk about the current state of Cyberpunk and its future, right? So let's get into that right now, starting with the feedback that has been receiving of late. Now, first and foremost, let's not forget that when the Witcher Netflix series came out, Witcher 3 got quite the big bump in play during that time. Not to say that Witcher 3 was a bad game. It's actually a great game, actually. The bump from the Netflix series helped it even more, as it did with the Cyberpunk, which has, it was very sorely needed when the Edge Runners Netflix show came out. So CD Projekt Red put out the Edge Runners patch along with it. And it's pretty much around that time when Cyberpunk 2077 received a lot of positive feedback. Now, there are plenty videos out even now with Cyberpunk's playthrough from start to finish. New reviews and all of it positive. Even videos with a lot of speculation on the expansion. Also, don't forget the videos on the awesome mods that have been coming out as well. You would think that Cyberpunk 2077 has truly redeemed itself and lived up to the hype. Well, did it? Well, with everything that seems to be on the up and up, I hate to be that guy, but the answer is no. I'm sorry, but it's true. And I love CD Projekt Red and Cyberpunk 2077, but they redeemed themselves? No. I'm sorry. It just, no. Did they fix the game up to a playable state enough to enjoy? Sure they did. But did it live up to the hype? Nope, it didn't. Now you might be thinking, wait a minute. They got Phantom Liberty coming. Surely they will fix everything, right? No. And for those that watched my last video on this may already know that since that was some time ago, I'm going to elaborate now. We're going to get into the meat of the issues with Cyberpunk. I'm going to break it down so that there's no confusion. So let's get into it. Now, for Cyberpunk 27 to live up to the hype, to redeem itself, it's going to need what I call, pillars. 3 pillars. Now, the first pillar is infrastructure. The second pillar is the social or societal part of the game. The third pillar is the glue that helps hold everything together while keeping the other 2 pillars up. So I'll call that immersion mechanics. Now, the other 2 add to the immersion, but there's also mods that can add a lot of immersion as well, like Skyrim and Fallout is a good example. So with that, let's start with the first pillar. Now, infrastructure, what I mean by that is that the infrastructure is the meat, the guts, right? That needs to be stuffed into this game. Now, in its current state, let's be honest now, it's pretty empty. And I'm speaking on the immersion tip because that's like the number one thing Cyberpunk 2077 needs. It's a whole lot of immersion. And I'll give you some examples. One example is the very beginning of the game, right? When you're in a scav hideout with Jackie. The objective is to find and rescue a wealthy woman who was abducted for cyberware like the other victims, right? Now, this mission was pretty cool as a new player coming into the game. Now, if you watched old videos before the game came out, then you saw this mission a long time ago. However, If you didn't, and take in the whole environment of the scavenger hideout, you get a sense of how bad things are in the world of Cyberpunk, especially once the mission is over and the trauma team arrives. And how if you couldn't afford it, you're in dire straits dealing with the trauma team and whatnot. Now, all of this was pretty immersive, including when you and Jackie pay a visit to Maelstrom. All of this was pretty good, but once you finish the Arasaka mission, that's pretty much when everything goes downhill. Jackie was pretty much one of the most important NPCs as far as V is concerned. And now he is gone. You're on your own. And while you're in your apartment, you look outside your window and think to yourself, this right here is Night City. Despite losing Jackie and being introduced to Johnny Silverhand, you're still excited to step outside and experience more of Night City has to offer, right? But soon after that, it hits you, and there really isn't much there. You see the same NPCs wearing the same clothes or identical to each other, and the honeymoon period of the game starts to wear off fast. You go through the paces, you complete side missions, etc., but not much has changed, right? Well, this brings me back to the first pillar, infrastructure. Now, in my last video, I was talking about minor things that the game needs to add to immersion, because all those minor things add up, right? So one of those minor things was parking. Because come on, you can't just drive up to most of your missions only to leave your car in the middle of the street while you do your mission, and everyone just sits there and waits patiently till you finish and come back, right? You know that is completely immersion killing and makes no sense. I also said that just to add something that minor would require rebuilding the entire city from scratch, which is also a problem because think about it. You have a game over a decade old, GTA 5. That doesn't have any of these issues. And I can't help but to compare the two because you would think that CD Projekt Red looked at GTA 5 before building Night City. You can park anywhere in GTA 5. Night City being futuristic is no excuse. The city planning is just poor, and you guys know it. Whenever you see a gang hanging out, they always have their car all the way in, almost part of the venue, because they can't simply park anywhere near the sidewalk like GTA 5, right? The fact that they have to put all these gangs in their vehicles far off the street to beyond the sidewalk says a whole lot about how the city is built. Now, you might be thinking, is this parking thing really important? Yes. Yes, it is. Because it all leads to all the other things you guys want in the game. And I'll explain that in a moment as this leads to Pillar 2. But that one thing, parking, was just one of many examples. The empty buildings that can be used for other things and so on. But let's get on to Pillar 2, which is the social or societal part of the game. Earlier, I spoke about the gangs, right? Now, one of the many things people wanted to do in the game was to do something about the gangs. Like they wanted to join them or create their own gang or join a corp, or in the case of the Corpo Origin or Path, make your own corp. Obviously, you can't do any of these things, but you wish it was in the game though, right? But you can't. Even if you did put that in the game, how would these gangs do anything without a place to park? Imagine going to your own base or hideout only to see your gang can't even ride up to your base without running people over. Now, you know that's funny. And even if the gangs were to attack you, it's all scripted. The game literally clears the streets and then spawns enemies in a car to then ride up on you and get out to shoot at you. You can certainly tell on any mission that has you in a car-to-car shootout. Notice how the traffic just mysteriously disappears. And how in all these instances, no Night City police are around. Max Tech is not dealing with any of those cyber psychos, even if you got there first. Some of those people have been massacred and they never show up. But enough of that. Let's go back to Pillar 2. So, one of the things about Cyberpunk 2077 is that the NPCs have nothing to do. Even GTA 5 peds at least do something. And I've seen these peds leave a building, get into a car, drive home, get out, stand in front of their front door, or go to a place to hang out with their friends, play golf, things like that. The game at least gives the peds something to do, a purpose. But in Cyberpunk, you can follow someone for 2 blocks only to watch them do a 180 and go back the way they came. Absolutely have nothing to do but walk. You can randomize them all you want, but they really just sit around and do nothing. Now, does every random NPC need a schedule like Skyrim or Fallout? Yes. Because even though GTA 5 had already did this to some degree, the peds just fade or disappear when you're out of range. But the thing is, V doesn't have much of a social life. It pretty much is one mission to the next. And when you were with Jackie, there was some personality there. And before you got the Arasaka mission, you sat down with him while he ate. You know, these sort of interactions are good. And there should have been a whole lot more of them, because at least it makes you feel like you're living in Night City. And you all, I remember reading articles about how you'd meet all kinds of NPCs, or how they said like you could date some of these NPCs, you could cheat on them, they cheat on you. But instead we got like the BioWare romance. Having people text you most of the time and you could text them back isn't the way to go. And what about Jackie's mom? If you went to the street kid route, or any of the paths, because they're pretty much like, it pretty much ends the same way. But she was pretty much like a mom to you as well, and it's definitely in the street kid route. You lived under her roof for a bit, so you can deliver Jackie's body to her and have like a farewell little mission after it, and then it's pretty much adios, because you don't hear from his mother when you until you finish the game. Pretty much, you don't interact with much of the various games, except like for the fighting one, you interact with one of the animals, and the Maelstrom mission with Jackie, you'll end up running into the Maelstrom again, but it's like in a mission. It's not really something part of your social life. It's just a mission. And that's kind of the problem. Like, you don't have much of a social life at all, if any. Which brings me to Pillar 3, immersion mechanics. Now, let's just say all of the stuff I said earlier, and even the things you're thinking about that the game should have that I haven't mentioned at all yet, well, it still wouldn't work because of what I mentioned in the last video, which is the storyline. That by far, the storyline kills anything you can think of to add to the game as far as immersion, because seriously, getting a bunch of apartments and stuff like that is nice, but V isn't thinking about apartments. And didn't V get like evicted out of the first apartment, which I don't remember if he even paid for it, but if you looked at the computer, it says he's evicted and whatnot. But anyway, when you have a chip in your head killing you, a lot of the missions you do is the last thing on your mind. Most of these missions make sense before the Arasaka mission, except the main quest after you have the chip. But because you need to build a name for yourself in the path story you choose, or the origin story, let's face it though, it was extremely short and it could have used a whole lot more. Just on the origin path story alone, could have been a far better introduction to Cyberpunk for the new player. You could have done a whole lot before even like leading up to the Arasaka mission. Also, another thing they could have done besides, differentiate between the two origin specific dialogue. But I mean, let's be honest, that didn't add much of anything to the game. If you played all the paths or origins and beat the game like 3 times and used all the special dialogue, you already know, like, it doesn't really add much at all to the game. But in any case, Pillar 3 immersion mechanics would be, as I said earlier, the glue holding it all together. It would give you better and more unique NPCs and be able to deal with the other gangs and how they interact with each other. They should also be doing the things they're known for. Like Maelstrom is all about cyberware, so they would attack people with cyberware and take their cyberware, because they do that too, not just the scavs, but the gangs should basically do what they're known for, and getting into it with each other and interacting with each other as well, which you don't see. So immersion mechanics would be to make all these things work together fluidly. Now, besides comparing this to GTA 5, let's look at it from something more recent that's also achieved like this a whole lot better than Cyberpunk 2077. And that would be Ubisoft's Watch Dogs Legions. Now, in that game, you can look at every NPC in the game, and they all have their own schedules, so they have something to do. There were many times where I would go do a mission, and I would see somebody that I've ran into before. Like, I see a guard that was working at night, and then I'd see that same guy like jogging the next morning. So you also see like people go in and out of buildings that you don't have access to, where like in GTA 5, when the NPC goes home, they sort of just hover around the front door. But all in all, like Cyberpunk 2077 really has really should have implemented something similar, and it's a really good example of like a much needed immersion mechanic. Now, with Cyberpunk, another thing that they could have done again is to change the main storyline, because that would be great. Because while V has this chip in his head with all these missions you do in the game, I just can't believe that V could last as long as he or she did. But even so, now they have this expansion coming, Phantom Liberty. Now, from my understanding, this expansion will add or fill an entire district you didn't have access to before. So the moment I saw this trailer and I could see that Johnny was still in V's head, I'm like, wait, you do all these missions and you still have time for this expansion with this chip in your head? I mean, come on, V didn't have that much time left. And to keep this storyline going, that's why I'm like, no, this main storyline is an obstacle, like, to all the things people want in the game. I can only hope the expansion changes like the endings, or while at the same time fix Night City streets or something. But I don't think that will happen. Once the expansion is out, that's pretty much it for Cyberpunk. Anything else Cyberpunk related will be on Unreal Engine 5, including the multiplayer Cyberpunk game. Red Engine seems too difficult to work with, so Witcher 4 will likely go the same route. This is also the reason I wouldn't leave it up to the modders to keep the game afloat. The mods that they make already are pretty awesome, but to think that they can keep that up for a decade like Skyrim or Fallout, that's expected way too much. I'm sorry. All in all, from the terrible launch to the hacking incident to being sued by investors and the following settlement, CD Projekt Red for a long time had the reputation of being the good guys. The ones who aren't there just to make loot boxes and anything else with microtransactions to nickel and dime you. I think that's still important. Despite their recent setbacks, they have so far remained the good guys. Keep in mind, they had released a video basically saying it was their execs or the corpos of CD Projekt Red that made the bad decision to launch Cyberpunk 2077, not the devs. And we also got edge runners, and so that has to account for something, right? But a lesson can certainly be learned from this. So much so that when Bethesda did what they usually do, which is launch their game on a specific date that lines up, like November 11th, 2011 or something like that, they did this again with their latest game, Starfield, up until their devs said they were about to put out a Cyberpunk. Only then did it seem that their higher-ups understood the meaning of that and decided to delay its launch. And rightfully so. Anyways, these are my thoughts on the current state of Cyberpunk 2077. And whilst Phantom Liberty is said to be a huge expansion and whatnot, I don't think it would be a game change or anything like that. I have my doubts. But we'll see. If it turns out to be anything significant, I'll make another video about it. But for now, thanks to all of you who stuck around to the end of this video. And if you enjoyed this video, please like or subscribe, as I'll be releasing a lot more similar content in the future and some other things. So again, thank you all for watching and have a nice day. Bye.